The report reached Fleet Commander Ossek Thurn 72 hours after the first human contact went dark. He read it twice. Then a third time, certain he'd mistranslated something in the human dialect their linguistic array had barely finished parsing. Weapon classification. Unknown. Observed deployment. Acoustic. Threat level. Catastrophic. Acoustic, Ossek repeated to his second-in-command, a broad-shouldered Vashtar named Drelkesh. They are using sound. That is what the survivors claim, Commander. Survivors. From an orbital bombardment fleet of 40 ships. 3 ships returned. The others, Drell hesitated. The others report their crews would not fight. Would not, in some cases, continue living. The Vashtar Dominion had conquered 11 species in 300 years. They did not lose wars. They did not retreat. Their doctrine was simple. Overwhelming force applied without hesitation, until resistance became mathematically impossible. Earth had been catalogued as a low-priority annexation target. A single-system civilization with primitive fusion drives and no meaningful defense fleet. The invasion force sent to subdue it was almost insultingly small. 40 warships, 6,000 ground troops, standard occupation protocol. Ossek had expected surrender within the week. Instead, he was standing on the bridge of the Ashwind Reach, watching sensor telemetry that made no sense, listening to a debrief from a lieutenant whose hands would not stop shaking. "Play it again," Ossek said. The lieutenant, a younger officer named Prax Island, swallowed hard and activated the recording. It had been captured by a reconnaissance drone over what the humans called Nevada, in the western portion of their largest remaining sovereign territory, the United States. On the screen, a human woman in worn desert fatigues, 60 meters from a Vashtar forward position, standing in the open with no visible weapon. Beside her, a single piece of equipment, a rugged waterproof speaker cabinet, roughly a meter tall, mounted on a tripod. She flipped a switch. Sound rolled across the desert. It wasn't a weapon in any sense the Vashtar understood. No kinetic force. No radiation. No chemical agent. Just noise. A rhythmic, layered wall of human music, low frequencies that Ossek's translators struggled to categorize, mixed with something closer to a chant, and beneath it all a voice. Human, aged, cracking with something between fury and grief, repeating words in a language Ossek systems flagged as pre-invasion English, decades old, pulled from some kind of archival broadcast. "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." The Vashtar position, 41 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles, did not fire on the woman. They did something worse. Within 4 minutes, weapons began dropping. Soldiers sat down in the dirt. 2 removed their helmets entirely, faces turned toward the speaker, some crying, some simply staring, as if remembering something they had never actually experienced. By minute 7, the position had abandoned its defensive posture completely. The recording ended when the drone lost signal, jammed by something the humans called. In a follow-up transmission Ossek's analysts had translated with visible reluctance, a boombox from a pickup truck. "This is absurd," Ossek said. "This cannot be a coincidence. Sound does not do this." "Commander," Prax said quietly, "it isn't just the one recording. We have 41 incidents like this. Different music. Different speeches. A woman singing something called an anthem outside a POW camp. 3 of our guards opened the gates themselves. A child's recorded laughter looped, played from a drone near our supply depot in what they call Ohio. Our engineers refused further sabotage of the town's water systems and 2 resigned their commissions on the spot, in the middle of a war." Ossek stared at the star charts, at the neat red markers denoting Vashtar losses. Not from beam weapons, not from missiles, but from desertion, from crews who had simply stopped being willing to fight. "Bring me whoever is coordinating this," he said. "I want to understand the weapon before I authorize further engagement." 3 weeks later, under a flag of provisional truce neither side entirely trusted, Ossek Thurn stood in a repurposed high school gymnasium outside a town called Prescott, Arizona, across a folding table from a woman named Colonel Ellen Whitcomb. She was 53 years old, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, a service pistol on her hip she hadn't bothered to holster properly. She did not look like the architect of a weapon that had broken the morale of an interstellar invasion fleet. "You want to know how it works," she said. It wasn't a question. I want to understand why it works, Ossek said. Your species has no weapon in this arsenal capable of harming my forces physically. And yet you have inflicted more operational damage on my fleet in 3 weeks than the Karate resistance managed in 6 years. Wickham almost smiled. The Karate didn't have Motown. Ossek's translator flagged the word as untranslatable and moved on. We didn't build a weapon, Commander, she said. We just stopped hiding what we already had. Every species you've conquered, did any of them ever ask your soldiers what they were fighting for? Ever played them something that reminded them of a childhood, a home, a mother's voice, and asked them to keep shooting anyway? Emotional appeals do not stop plasma cannons. No, Whitcomb agreed. But your soldiers aren't cannons. They're people. Same as ours. Turns out most people, given a moment of silence and a song that reminds them they used to have a life outside of orders, start asking questions their commanders really don't want asked. We didn't invent that vulnerability, Commander Thurn. We just noticed you'd never accounted for it. 11 species conquered, and not once did anyone try talking to the soldiers instead of shooting at them. Ossek said nothing for a long moment. Behind him, on a portable console, Prax Island was running new casualty figures, not deaths but defections. 312 Vashtar personnel had now formally requested asylum on Earth soil. The number climbed daily. You are asking me to believe, Ossek said slowly, that my empire's true weakness was never technological. I'm telling you, Wickham said, that you built an army of conquerors and forgot they were also just guys a long way from home, wondering if any of it means anything. We just gave them a reason to wonder out loud. The Vashtar withdrawal from the Sol system was never formally announced. There was no surrender document, no treaty signing broadcast across 1,000 worlds. There was simply, over the following months, an emptying of orbit, ships departing quietly, their crews smaller each time, their captains filing reports that grew steadily more honest and steadily less useful to a dominion built on unquestioning conquest. Colonel Wickham kept the old speaker cabinet from that first Nevada broadcast. It sat, dented and sun-bleached, in a glass case at what would later become the Sol Defense Memorial outside Prescott, a small brass plaque beneath it reading nothing more than a date, and 6 words. They never once asked us why.